Hey guys, welcome to Amity Tracks. This is should be our inaugural episode, and we're just kind of we're gonna get right into it. If you're interested in what this channel is all about, please read the description. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe to the channel, like the videos, hit the bell for notifications if you want to know when new videos are coming. Yeah, that's how we get into the algorithm of YouTube, right? Um, let's just dive right into it. Today's episode is something I've always enjoyed discussing with music friends, and uh, it's albums that you really like or even love, but you're not really supposed to love, that much. Either they are not really critically acclaimed, or even amongst the avid fan base of a certain artist or band, they're not very appreciated. But for whatever reasons, they're an album that you really like. So I've picked five that I want to get into, and if you have strong opinions about these records, or you have records in mind, of your own that you've always really liked, even though you're not supposed to, put them in the comments. That would be great, and we can have a good discussion. All right. So I'm gonna kind of do a countdown from 5 to 1. Now, all but one of these records, I believe, are from the 80s, but this number 5 here is from the 60s. Um, the methodology that I basically use is sort of the wider the gulf between the more I love it and the more it's disliked. Kind of the stronger, the higher on the list it is. All right, number 5. Now, this record from 1967, this record is not, I mean, it's not really disliked. It's more of one that just sort of falls in the cracks and is sort of forgotten about, because this is one of the great artists with a huge discography. Before, he was kind of in this raw kind of R&B influenced rock band, and then after this record, he released a whole string of just absolute masterpiece classics. And so his solo debut is again just not really talked about very much, and I'm talking about Van Morrison's "Blowing Your Mind!" exclamation mark. Now, I know he had nothing to do with this album cover, and he's always hated it. Van hates a lot of things, but I think it's sort of indicative of the times. Again, not a bad album, and not an album that is disliked, but if it's discussed at all, it's often like, oh well, this was just sort of his, he's just getting started. And of course, Astral Weeks comes after this, right? So but there's some good stuff on here, and I'm not even talking about Brown Eyed Girl, because I mean, it's not a bad song. Brown Eyed Girl is a great pop song. But I find it so irritating that for so many people, that is like the only Van Morrison song that they know, that they can name. It's really the only one that shows up on the radio. It's the only one that you go to a wedding or something. That's the one, right? It's like the guy has 40 whatever albums. I don't know exactly how many, but a ton. Uh, you know, Classics. There's so much Van Morrison music, but it's like Brown Eyed Girl, Brown Eyed Girl. It's just lazy. Yeah, if I never hear that song again, I'll be all right, because there's a lot of other great Van Morrison music out there. But this one's interesting because this is kind of a bridge, between the sort of raw R&B flavored rock and roll of them, which was the band he was in and he is the singer for, and then his own kind of very soon after this, way more complex music that he would explore. And this is kind of a bridge between those two, and it's just real good stuff on there. Again, aside from Brown Eyed Girl, my favorite, the one song on here that I think hints at what is coming, is TB Sheets. It's like this 10-minute, just harrowing, almost stream of consciousness song, where TB is in tuberculosis, right, where he's visiting his girlfriend who is either dying or very ill in the hospital with tuberculosis, and all he wants to do is get the hell out of there. And that's what the song's about. It's a strange topic for a song, I know, and then to ramble on for 10 minutes, but it's an absolute mesmerizing song, and it's so indicative of kind of the explorations he would do later. And it's almost like this drone, but it just really grabs you. So anyway, yeah, is this in the top echelon of Van Morrison albums? No, it's not, obviously, but it's really good, and I really like it, and it's just not talked about all that much. So that is how that makes this list. Number four. Now, number four was a huge hit in, let's see, was it 1987. Number four was a huge hit, and I believe it was where I got on board with this band. Well, a lot of people my age, I guess. And it was from, MTV. It was from the video for Learning to Fly. And so I'm talking about Pink Floyd, or some people don't acknowledge this as really Pink Floyd, but A Momentary Lapse of Reason, right there, which is basically David Gilmour. There he is. David Gilmour and Nick Mason. Now, Richard Wright does play on this, and obviously Roger Waters is not there. There you go. Now, look, I fully acknowledge and understand the flaws of this record. The 80s, it drowns in 80s production. Now, so much so that they have tried to rectify that. This is interesting. Now, this came out, when was this? 2019, I think. I have this on CD. This is out on vinyl, but I just have the CD version. But it's called Remixed and Updated. So they substantially kind of remixed this to try and, get the 80s production out as much as they could. Um, I mean, it's still the same album, but they do kind of tone down some of the 80s production. One of the real big differences, they really do bring Richard Wright up in the mix. He's kind of buried in this mix. You only know he's there because he's in the credits. So you don't really hear him on this. Here you do. They really bring Richard Wright's parts kind of back into the mix, which is great. His keyboards. They do change, or they have some alternate guitar solos from Gilmour. I think, from what I understand, is they took some live performances from this tour, and they sort of grafted some of those guitar solos, and so the solos are a little bit different on here. This does have a great sound. I mean, if you don't like this, are you all of a sudden going to love it? Because no, it's still the same album, same songs. But yeah, I think it's interesting if you're a fan of the album, just to compare. How do you tell the difference? The album cover. So you see the hang glider here, right? He's kind of in the real close here in the foreground here. If you look on the original album cover, there he is. He's like way in the distance here. So when he's like really close, you have the new remix version. You're just looking at the artwork. Anyway, let's talk about this record. So the background of this record is interesting. The background of this was after the final cut. Roger Waters declared Pink Floyd kind of a spent force, right? And he decided the band should end. He felt he was in charge. Well, fast forward several years, and David Gilmour has other ideas. And he does recruit Nick Mason into this. And, to be fair, to me, as much as the final cut is really a Roger Waters solo album, where the rest of the Pink Floyd members are just kind of used as studio musicians, really, not really contributing creatively. Similar deal here. This is a David Gilmour solo album. Roger Waters is not involved. Nick Mason is, marginally involved. And then they pulled in Richard Wright at the very last minute, really to strengthen their court case, because Roger Waters sued them to try and prevent them from using the Pink Floyd name. Why didn't Gilmour just release this under his name? Well, I think he wanted to make a lot more money, and a record with that name on it and he could play stadiums versus maybe small clubs as David Gilmour. So I don't know. Maybe he really artistically felt this was an extension of Pink Floyd. But anyway, Roger Waters called it a what did he say? Like a decent facsimile of Pink Floyd or something. It was very backhanded, hardly a compliment, and he's disparaged this record a lot since. I've always really liked it. I think Learning to Fly still does hold up as a great single. Um, I still really enjoy that song. Uh, On the Turning Away, I think, is a genuinely great song. And yeah, obviously, this record suffers from not nearly as great lyric writing because Roger Waters isn't there with the concepts and everything, and David Gilmour's not a great lyric writer, and he brings some other people in, but it's just sort of a hodgepodge of whatever. I think the exception, actually, On the Turning Away is that's a nice song lyrically. It's a beautiful song, and it's where kind of that blanket of '80s synthesizers really kind of works here. And he comes in with that that nice acoustic strum, and it's got nice vocal delivery from Gilmour, and then of course the soaring David Gilmour guitar solo at the end. On the Turning Away, I think it's a great song. One Slip, well, it's real poppy, about as pop as Pink Floyd got. It's a dumb lyrics, but I think musically it's kind of cool. I think the whole second side actually it kind of works as this suite that I think musically I think it's nice. Again, the lyrics, who cares? Um, but Yet Another Movie is a really good song. Sorrow is basically an excuse for a very long David Gilmour guitar solo, but who's complaining about that, right? I mean, is it all great? No. Dogs of War is a dog, um, of a song. If you, it's kind of funny on the remix, they they cut Dogs of War short, like it fades out a lot quicker, and it's kind of like they get through it faster. It's not a great song. But I don't know. Like I said, I've got a weak spot for this. This is where I came on board, and then only after that, just because of my age at the time, did I explore and discover Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall and Animals and everything else. Wish You Were Here. All right, number three. Now, number three is interesting. I think number three is one of those records. If you wait long enough, a lot of records that are panned early on or misunderstood early on is if enough time goes by, there's a reassessment. And I think this album actually has a lot of fans. I'm on record for kind of always really liking this record. Now, it came out in 1982, and it's from one of my very favorite artists. I'm talking about Neil Young's Trans. His electronic, um, his Kraftwerk album, right? Kind of Kraftwerk Devo album. It's all programmed beats and synthesizers, although there's a little bit of guitar on there. And just to make it even weirder, I think it's like the first couple of tunes on there are from a completely different session, and they sound like these sort of laid-back Jimmy Buffett Hawaiian type tunes. It was from another aborted project, so he tacks those songs on there, and then he gets into his Kraftwerk stuff. And then to make it even worse, so to speak, he runs his voice through a vocoder, where I believe I pronounced that right. Where he basically kind of makes his voice computerized and robotic, where you can't really understand the lyrics at all. There's Neil right there. Although he does provide the lyrics here, so that's nice if you do want to know what he's singing. This was notorious when it came out. It was totally, people were baffled. It's still a weird listen. I don't know, it has its fans, and I've always thought it was pretty cool. Because underneath all this, there's some really good songs, actually. I think Transformer Man is a good song. Computer Age, Sample and Hold. There's this great, just total, like, programmed electronic version of Mr. Soul on there. His old Buffalo Springfield hit. It's just crazy. Kind of interesting behind this, he didn't reveal this at the time, but he has a couple of children with some severe disabilities, and some of which includes difficulty communicating. And so he was going through all this kind of intense therapy with his family, trying to communicate with his son. Um, and so he sort of explained since then, that part of why he disguised his voice so much, to where you can't, it's like, you have to struggle to try and understand what he's saying. He was trying to sort of reflect, what he was going through with his own son and at the time. And it's kind of interesting. You know, but regardless, it's a unique listen, especially in Neil Young's discography. All right, number two. Number two was a huge hit. I should have researched this ahead of time, but my editor will put some stats up here. But I think this is the case. I think this is this band's biggest selling record, if you're just looking at numbers. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. But my point was, this was a huge hit. This was a massive hit for this group. Critically, especially retrospectively, a lot of critics don't really like this record, hardly at all. A lot of the hardcore fans of this band dismiss this record. This band is known for its kind of authenticity, this authentic blues rock sound, which is awesome. I love it. I love this band. And this is the least bluesy record in their entire discography. But it was huge. And I've always really liked it. I'm talking about ZZ Top's Afterburner, right? There it is. From 1985 is when this came out. ZZ Top's Afterburner. It's kind of cool if you look on the spine. I always like this. It's got the price on here, the list price, $9.98. That's what Warner Brothers wanted you to pay for this. Anyway, so yeah, ZZ Top's Afterburner. This was huge. Now, so of course ZZ Top had just released Eliminator, or the previous record, which was huge, right? Eliminator explode. I love Eliminator. Is amazing. Eliminator was bold, because Eliminator was, ZZ Top was entering the 80s as just sort of one of these 70s dinosaurs. And they, maybe more than anybody else, made the most successful, unlikely transition into the 80s and were huge. I think they had a sense of humor about everything. And as much as they were these like blues rocks masters, they were always open to experimentation, and so, why not explore, some program beats and, some synthesizers. But what was cool on Eliminator is they kept it heavy. It was still kind of this heavy rock album, even with these synths and these program beats and everything else. And they never compromised like Billy Gibbons's great guitar work, right? So it still had a foot in the familiar. And it was a great batch of songs. So anyway, Eliminator was huge. It's kind of cool. This is the next one, right? And they just like, let's just double down. Let's just go even further out there, right? And there's some great pop songs on here. Sleeping Bag, Stages, that's a great song. Rough Boy, it's a great ballad. Planet of Women, Velcro Fly. Silly, fun songs. ZZ Top always, kind of tongue in cheek, and they really went there on this. Yeah, if you want that great blues rock sound from ZZ Top, there's 12, 13, 14, whatever other albums to go listen to. That's fine. But this on its own is great. I think this is great. Dipping Low in the Lap of Luxury. I've always liked that song. Some of this is juvenile. Woke Up with Wood, right? But I've always had a soft spot for this one. I still enjoy it. I can still put it on. It's so 80s, but so what? These guys are having a great time. And they wrote some catchy tunes, And it did sell a ton of copies. All right, my number one, though. My number one is really sort of why I wanted to make the video in the first place. This is an album I have always loved. This is an album, when it came out, what was it, 1983. I loved it then. I've always loved it since. Generally not well regarded by critics, although I think some have come around and think it's pretty good. Um, Not all that well regarded by fans of this group either. This group has decades and decades of music, so a ton of records. If you look at other like album rankings from this band, which I'll do one later, but this often shows up near the bottom. I don't think I've ever seen it at the bottom, but often near the bottom. Out of a very large discography. I think it's all wrong. I have always loved the Rolling Stones Undercover. This is a great record. I mean, say what you will. This is the record. This is the last album that I think the Stones were really trying. The Stones were really trying to sort of still break some ground, do something new, capture the current, music within their own sound. That's not to say they haven't made some good records since. They have. But honestly, it's been cruise control. It's been cruise control since then. Not so on here. I mean, one of the big knocks on this record, right, is it's angry, it's mean, it's violent, it's misogynistic. Yeah. You're listening to the Rolling Stones. What? Anyway, yes, all of those things. Um, but it's just so good too. I mean, I think this is a great, great, gritty rock record. I mean, it's modern for that time, but it still kind of has that classic Stones sound. It's that perfect mesh between the two. I think it's fantastic. Um, this is one of the very few records they ever put out where they didn't cash in and do a huge tour afterwards because they hated each other so much. Mainly Mick Jagger and Keith Richards were near the nadir of their relationship. They were really not getting along here. But all that tension is here in these grooves on this record. So good that that the single "Undercover of the Night." I think I put that single up there with any great Rolling Stones single. I don't care what era. "Undercover of the Night's" a great killer song. Um, She Was Hot. I've seen a lot of people kind of complain it's kind of generic Stones. I think it's great, man. It's got that great kind of Chuck Berry groove that the Stones, put on a ton of their records. Too Much Blood is fantastic. I've always loved that song. I've got the single for Too Much Blood right here. Isn't that great? Love that cover. Yeah, I think Too Much Blood is as great of a kind of a groovy dance song as Miss You. I mean, it's got that great slinky bass line. It's got those horns, those punchy horns. Mick Jagger's having a blast. That little spoken word interlude, the horror film references. It's fun. Yeah, I mean, it's violent. It's angry. Tie You Up, The Pain of Love. Pretty Beat Up, Too Tough. All the Way Down, It Must Be Hell. I mean, all those songs on here, yeah, they're all kind of mean songs. Anyway, I just love, love, love this record. I always have. And honestly, like, the ZZ Top, I understand what people are saying. The Neil Young, I understand what people are saying. The Pink Floyd, I understand what people are saying. I don't get why. I don't get the people that like really don't like this, that dislike this record, if they're Stones fans. He's great. It's fantastic. All right, guys. Appreciate you watching. Stay tuned for the next one coming up soon. Like I said, we're just getting started here, so it would be great if you could support us. All you gotta do, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, hit the bell if you want notifications. In the comments, what are some records that you love that you're not supposed to? Records that have gotten critically panned, or the loyal fan bases don't think you should like it, but you've just always dug that record. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.